Welcome, everyone, to episode number 2 of the Lorecraft podcast. I am one half of your hosting crew, Erston, and with me is my compatriot, Mike.
Yo, I am Mike. So, today on this episode of the Lorecraft podcast, we're going to be talking about memorable experiences and how important they are to the roleplay experience as a whole, not just particularly in-game experiences, but also how important they are to us outside of the game and informing those bonds that become so important to us. We will both Thurston and myself will go ahead and share a couple of good stories that we like to call tales from the tabletop, that we are potentially going to make into its own thing at some point. And then we will be going over any other particular memorable experiences aside from those stories. And then we will see about going over a particularly interesting tool that we like to use for not just recording the podcast, but one that is also good for recording your games, especially if you're playing over Discord. Ursa, why don't you go ahead and tell them about our burgeoning social network empire?
All right, so as usual, you can reach us on the standard socials. We have Lorecraft Inc. on Twitter, or X, whichever your flavor is for calling it these days. We're also on Mastodon, and actually, to be truthful, I check Mastodon more than I check Twitter these days, at Lorecraft. We're also on TikTok, I believe, as well, at Lorecraft Inc. And of course, our YouTube channel, which we're going to figure out what we're going to do with that at some point, which is also at Lorecraft Inc. Something new that we've finally been able to roll out for our podcast is the mailbag. We'd like to, take viewer questions, viewer comments, and be able to answer them on the show. So you can go ahead and send us mail at mailbag@lorecraft.media. And we'll definitely have the link in the description. Send us your questions, complaints, comments, anything. We'll take anything and we'll talk about it, good or bad. I think that kind of...
we will take anything and we will talk about it.
Exactly. Yeah. So I guess without further ado, let's jump right in. I was going to give my story first, but maybe you should give yours first, actually, since I just did a lot of talking.
Okay. I'm certainly okay with that. My story, and this is particularly something that one of my good friends is going to enjoy hearing when I let her know that I have talked about it. In short, it is called Eating the Scroll. It's a pretty GM POV story, since that's most of what I do. So, gosh, how long ago was it? It had to have been like 10 or so years ago. I'm running an Exalted game. It is myself, my friends Justin. Was Felicia? I don't think so. Justin, Matt, Stephanie, Kevin, and maybe a couple others that I don't remember off the top of my head that I don't associate with anymore. However, I'm running this game and I am stealing heavily from a lot of stuff, from like Slayers and Final Fantasy and stuff like that, because it's freaking Exalted. Even Sailor Moon, particularly Sailor Moon the movie. One of the enemies that one of the big bads was Fiore. I made Fiore and Exalted. Because Fiore is such a badass. So Stephanie's character is an Eclipse cast, if I remember correctly, who was very much like a fortune teller, future caster type character. And I had created so there's 12 Death Lords, and then there's supposed to be the 13th, and the 13th Death Lord is supposed to be like the one that like seals the deal and ends, is going to be the one that wins the war or wins reality for the Neverborn. By the way, anybody listening to this who does not understand Exalted terminology, I apologize, because Exalted is very weird and it would be difficult to explain it succinctly. Especially stuff like the Neverborn.
That is very true.
So I had made the 13th Death Lord, and of course, because I'm cribbing from pretty much everything that I like, I essentially made the 13th Death Lord Sephiroth. Called him the one-winged angel. That was his sobriquet, was going to be the one-winged angel the whole nine. But he wasn't around yet. He was prophesized. And the players had gone through a number of trials. This game went on for several months before I kind of reached the apotheosis of it. And we were gearing up for season 2, essentially, which unfortunately I never got to run. And the players started hearing, the characters started hearing, about the prophecy of this 13th Death Lord, and that he was approaching, and they ended up getting a scroll made of Fate Weaver spider silk that actually detailed, like, they managed to pull some strings and work with some sidereals that didn't want to kill them, and after killing a whole bunch of sidereals that did, I even recreated fucking Organization 13. I turned Organization 13 into a sidereal cabal. No, into a faction of the Bronze faction. So like the players were a close-knit circle that controlled, I'm trying to remember what city it was. And this is Exalted 2. This is not Exalted 3, so I don't know what they've changed between then and then. But it was like the Forbidden City. It was a city in the middle of the Western, in the middle of the 100 Kingdoms that no one could access, that had like the Bronze Legions and shit.
I don't remember anymore.
And the players were their circle were the ones who ruled that city before it got locked down. And they ended up reclaiming it, and they were going to essentially start this new solar-ruled city because they had, or this solar-ruled kingdom, because they had the resources to be able to stave off anybody because they had the Bronze Legion, and they had Fiore, because Fiore was the guy that the spirit that they ended up putting in charge of the city when they locked it down back in the first age. And then he went nuts, and so they defeated him, and then they kind of quieted him down, and so now he was the god. Yeah. So they had the Bronze Legions, they had Fiore, they had everything that they needed to essentially start a solar kingdom right out there in the middle of the 100 Kingdoms. So they had gotten to this point, and Organization 13 was a cabal of Bronze faction sidereals that were created specifically to stop this circle. And by the end of season 1, they had essentially demolished Organization 13. The fight that I made with my Exalted version of Syax was a really good fight. Now that I'm remembering, it was really good. Oh, and oh man, there's other stories I'm going to end up pulling from this, but I'm going to try to stay on track. So they had gotten hold of the city. They had defeated Organization 13. They called in a favor from heaven so that way they could get the scroll detailing the prophecy of the one-winged angel. So Stephanie's character goes, "Okay, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to I want to really, because it was a riddle, of course, because it's a fucking prophecy. They're always in riddles."
Right.
She goes, "Okay, I want to really understand. I want to really get into and understand this prophecy. I want to know exactly what's going to happen. So I want to like do this divination." And I can't even remember the. Stephanie is amazing when she wants to accomplish something and she has time to think. She will put whatever elements that are on her character sheet and in the world that she knows, she will put them together and fucking come up with something. And if she has time to think, it's good. And sometimes if it's on the fly, it's better. And she kind of came up with this in like 30 minutes where she put these elements together so that way she could actually like ride the threads of fate that this prophecy was attached to and look into the future so that way she could see who it was that the one-winged angel, what the one-winged angel was going to look like, so that way they knew who to look for. Like, so that way they didn't get surprised by some rando showing up and suddenly becoming the one-winged angel. They wanted to know who it was. So I was like, okay, and I made it hard. I made it super hard. And of course, this is Exalted, so making things super hard just means that it's more likely that the player is gonna fucking do it because they'll find a way to, come up with the dice. So I'm like, all right, it's gonna take like 8 successes, and you've got all this other stuff going on. So here's some negatives and stuff like that. I tried to make it unfair but balanced. And this bitch, I love her to death, rolls 20 goddamn successes. 20.
Sweet Jesus. That is so many.
So many successes.
So many.
I go, all right, oh, here we go. So she essentially does a fucking net dive, fucking VR into the prophecy, travels essentially forward in time as an observer to see the end of the world brought by the one-winged angel. And, standing atop the juggernaut, Mask of Winters bowing at his feet, dark blade held high, she essentially materializes into this like still frame, like kind of like, where you're able to like move models around and shit like that, kind of like that.
Yeah.
And so she materializes into this, she sees him, she goes, okay. And then she goes, I want to talk to him. And I go, are you fucking kidding me? I go, well, okay, what are you trying to do? And she's like, I want to hear his voice. I want to have an utter and complete understanding of this enemy that we are going to have to face. I want to have as much advantage as possible. And I said, all right, well, you rolled 20 successes, so I can't really say no. Like, you literally over doubled the requirements that I made for the check. So, all right, here we go. So she essentially has a short conversation with the as yet unmaterialized one-winged angel. And he does the villain thing. And, by this time, this was after Advent Children and stuff had come out. So I was pulling a Sephiroth, I was like, what is it that you wish for me to bring you? Shall I bring you despair? Shit like that. So she has a conversation with the one-winged angel, and afterwards, after the spell is over and she gets pulled out, I go, okay, what are you doing? She looks at me. She looks me dead in my face and she goes, I'm going to eat the scroll. And I said, what?
What?
She goes, I'm tearing apart the scroll. I am stuffing it in my mouth and I'm swallowing it. And I go, why? She goes, because if I take it inside of myself, it can never come to pass. That is what my character believes. And I go, okay. So I let her do it. I let her tear. There wasn't anyone else there. There wasn't any kind of MacGuffins or anything I could pull out to legitimately stop her from doing so. So I said, all right, you eat the scroll. And then I let the game progress. I think we had like 2 or 3 more sessions. And then I look over at Stephanie and I go, your character hasn't been feeling very well lately. You're not 100% sure why. Oh, and she goes, well, I'm pretty sure that's probably because I ate the scroll.
Yeah.
And it's messing with me. And I said, you are correct, but not in the way that you think. I said, because her character was also a medic, a doctor, a midwife. And so I said, everything that you're experiencing in your body right now, you're pretty sure you're pregnant. And her character had not slept with anyone.
I see where this is going.
Yeah. So essentially, we never got to resolve it. We never got to actually. The characters had a big conversation because, like, I was like, "Yeah, you're pregnant." And for all intents and purposes, as far as any of you understand, it's because you ate the scroll, and now your friend is going to be the one to birth the harbinger of the end of the world. And they had a big conversation about it. There was a fight. They didn't get physical or anything, but the characters like really got on each other because yeah, and it was really good. Man, there was so much pathos in that fucking scene. I loved it. But ultimately, so the reason why this story especially is so very memorable is because from that point on, anytime we in the game think that Stephanie is about to do something that could potentially have very dire ramifications, we say, don't eat the scroll. And 9 times out of 10, Stephanie ends up eating the scroll because it's fun. But yeah, that is the story of Eat the Scroll. So anytime you mention me talking about someone eating the scroll, that is where in which they are essentially bringing about their own doom willingly.
That is a crazy
that is what that
story.
means. And it is very closely attached to precious memories of my very good friend and one of the best people I know. Her name is Stephanie, and I love her to death. And she will squee when I tell her that I have told this story in a forum to which other people can hear.
Okay. Well, my story was definitely not going to be even remotely close to that long, so I might actually have to break out like 2 or maybe even 3 of them just to be able to keep that time. Holy moly. So the one I was going to tell was took place in a galaxy far, far away in Star Wars D20. This is basically the 3rd edition. Came out around the time of 3rd edition, and
Yeah, like the first time they brought it out, right?
It had been out in other systems before.
Well, I mean, the first time we got that.
It.
Yeah, the first time we got it in D20, because I remember West End.
Yeah, that was like West End and stuff before that. But yeah, this is the first D20 version, and we were basically for the more or less playing through the Phantom Menace episode 1. We weren't like directly involved with like the main plot of the story. We were kind of having our own adventures, but we did end up like in the final battle from episode 1 where we're on the starbase and everything. and
The Trade Federation.
the Trade Federation ship, yeah. And none of us were Jedi. That was one of the things. We were basically bounty hunters and scoundrels. And we, just to add flavor, our DM was like, you see this epic battle like between Jedi and Sith in the background, like, this menacing man, with a double-bladed saber of red light, fighting off two Jedi. And we're like, huh. And my friend Evan goes, you know what? I'm going to take a shot at that red guy. So it's like, okay, you guys are like level 2, 3, because it was a one shot. Darth Maul's big badass. And he rolls a crit. And with the Star Wars rules in that setting, your health, your HP is your constitution, like the same. It's the same. And rolling crits bypasses your vitality, which is effectively the hit points in any normal D&D setting. Crits bypass that and go straight to hit points. Well, he rolled max damage. So it was funny because as soon as he declared he wanted to take the shot, the DM was like, "Okay, you're gonna regret this," and cues up, Duel of the Fates. And then as soon as he rolls that 20, he's like, "Oh, that's good. We'll roll damage." And then rolls max damage. He just kind of pauses the music, looks, sees that it's more than his Darth Maul's like actual health, and he goes, he burns half his force pool and manages to deflect the shot. So my other friend Thomas goes, okay, well then I will, I'll take a shot too.
Oh, then I'm gonna shoot him.
Yeah, why not? We're probably gonna die. We're not gonna survive this. What the hell? Rolls a crit and rolls max damage. And it's just like, pauses the music again. Huh. Okay. All right. He takes that shot and falls over the railing, kind of like how he did in the movie. And we're like, hey, that's sweet. We did it. We saved Qui-Gon. This is great. We've changed history. And the DM was a little dumbfounded. And, as we were making our escape, we kind of meet up with Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan. And from the vents, we hear a scream as Darth Maul's like upper torso falls on Qui-Gon Jinn, impaling him. And that's how history fixed itself.
Right, but because the Force will always make balance.
Everything balance. Yeah, there must be balance. And because my story was so short, I feel like I should tell another one, or maybe another 1.5, because technically I had 2 stories related to this, but it's kind of one thing. And in a way, it ties into what you were talking about because it involves a Buster Sword. I was on a Final Fantasy VII kick at the time, and I had made a character in a Rifts game, Platinum Fantasy, Rift setting. So I had, a big ass Buster Sword, and we were kind of reenacting a grand battle. And I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna spin my Buster Sword around like Cloud when he does his victory pose. He just kind of spins it recklessly. And I was like, well, it doesn't, work as well when you're kind of wading through combat with your allies around as well as your enemies. So roll me a percentage chance to not actually hit your allies. You're only going to have a 5% chance to not hit your allies. And I rolled a 4. And he was kind of burned by it because he wanted me to, because you could see it on his face that he wanted me to suffer the consequences of my recklessness. But no, I was just going do. No ally fatalities, no friendly slicing. But I kind of got my karma in the end because there was a part later where we were fighting off these enemies and portals started opening up with everything coming, like all sorts of just random shit coming out of these portals. And one of the things that popped out was some old grandmother, and I'm just like, oh well, okay. She's falling. She's falling from the sky, and I don't want her to die. So I'm like, you know what? I got this. We're gonna Silver Surfer this. I'm gonna throw my Buster Sword at her, and like she'll be able to land on it and kind of surf her way down. It'll be great. It'll be epic. And I rolled a 1.
So you
And
sword at an old lady.
And we're like, oh god. So my friend Thomas, who I kind of mentioned earlier in the Star Wars game, said, oh god, oh god. Well, I'm gonna take my two-handed great axe and I'm gonna throw it at the sword to to knock its trajectory out of the way, and so it doesn't like just dissect this poor old lady. And he rolls a 1. So unfortunately, grandmother, we are sorry that you did not survive that encounter, as
Not
you
only
were
did you not
double.
survive, you got
She was double bisected by a great sword and a great axe.
That's messed up.
And you can guarantee that IDM had a big grin about that. And
It's
you
like,
know what?
ha, dumbass.
And speaking of, you know what? I was going to only do 3, but I will do a 4th story that I didn't even have written down because it was technically not my own story. If you're familiar with Robotech Macross, one of my friends was running one of those games, and one of the players was complaining that there was too many NPCs in the game. He's just like, I can't keep track of them all. There's so many NPCs. Like I've got I've got the bridge staff, you've got the other pilots, and you got my family, and they got this and that, and like there's just there's too much, man. Like, and then the DM finally got fed up with this complaining and said, okay, well, the terrorists set off a nuke and your family is dead. They nuked the starbase that the ship that your family was on. And he definitely stopped complaining after that.
Right. That's
DM pettiness right there.
GM.
Yeah.
It's like, all right, you're gonna bitch about this? All right, I got something for you.
Yep. So from now on, we always talk about the we always laugh about too many NPCs. So enough from me.
Well, yes. My stories do tend to be fairly long-winded because I have such a detailed memory, and I remember like all of the little things that make up parts of the story. Like, there's actually way more to the Eat the Scroll than like that's really literally the basics of it. Like,
I'm sure
there's so much more to that. And like some of the other characters and references that I put in there, but that leads to, at least for me, talking about the effect of these positive experiences on our lives as role players, not just on GM side, but on a player side as well. Because, I mean, everyone, I think, looks for these positive experiences, and sometimes, I think, can put too much pressure on themselves and on other people at the table to generate these experiences. And I think that that's kind of something that falls into the critical role effect.
Yeah, I can see that. I agree.
In that, a person sees how much fun those folks are having at the table, even though it's semi-scripted. And they go, wow, that's really cool. And my God, Dimension 20. And what's the name of the guy who runs Dimension 20?
I've never actually
I can't.
seen or listened to it. Maybe
The
I know.
guy who runs Dimension 20 is an absolute wizard uh, at characterization, narrative storytelling, and kind of running and crafting a game. Like, if I wasn't confident in my abilities, I would be very jealous of this guy. And I can't remember his name, and now I'm going to have to kind of look it up while I'm
I'm
talking.
seeing a Brendan Lee Mulligan.
Brendan Lee Mulligan, that's him.
Yeah.
Watch some stuff with him in it. Like, you don't necessarily have to sit through a whole thing of Dimension 20. Watch some stuff with him in it, and you'll see. And you'll be like, damn, this guy's good. Um, like Matt Mercer's good, Brendan Lee Mulligan is better. Um,
That's a
and
bold
I mean
claim.
that might I mean, when you experience the guy and some of the stuff that he pulls off and that he talks about and is capable of doing, I think you'll eventually agree. But like I said, you know, people see that kind of stuff. They see like actual plays. They see, um, you know, stuff on YouTube and stuff like that, and they go, man, I really want that experience. And so positive experiences are very important. But I think also that, you know, one has to temper themselves and be like, and come to the understanding that you're not going to have the exact same experience. And it might take you a long time to get that positive experience. Like, I have the fortune in my gaming circle that I've been playing with a lot of the same people for literal decades. I've known Justin, and Justin is another people that there's going to be a lot of stories from about. Uh, I've played with Justin since I was 16 years old, and I am 40. I'm about to turn 42, and I've been playing with that guy that long. So I've had the fortune that I've been playing with the same people for a very long time, so you can develop uh these kinds of experiences. And it's unfortunate that sometimes people are kind of expecting that from the get-go. They're like, oh, we're all gamers, we all have the kind of this thing in common, so, you know,
This should just
maybe
work.
like this shit should work. Like 2 or 3 sessions in, we should have something that we're going to talk about for years.
Yeah, I feel like it's the raid. It's like the MMO raid group syndrome as well. Like, just because you have 8 people together, or, or 10 people or whatever it is for the game, doesn't mean that you're automatically going to be the awesome, super synergistic group that just can read each other's minds and know exactly how to play off of each other. It's something that you develop, and kind of like what you were saying. In all 4 of those stories that I've talked about, um, they're all of them, which included my friend Ish, Thomas, Jim, and Evan. I've known them all since high school. Thomas, I've known since middle school. So, like you said, decades. I've known them for 20, 25 years coming up on. So these experiences are crazy. And like, for instance, the games that Thomas ran us on, the Naruto and Bleach game, uh, which was just consisted of my friend Jim and I as the players. Our characters were just very in sync because we had known each other, for at least 6 years at that point, because we were right out of high school, a little bit out of high school. And just, and basically through Jim's whole college career is when we played it. So we just played off of each other very well. And that's just, like you said, it's something that develops. It's not going in with the expectation of just kind of having that positive experience all the time. I think, yeah, it kind of helps, or maybe becomes damaging from an expectation point of view, because um how do I describe it? You're trying to like push for it. You're trying to force these positive experiences, and it ends up like causing things to be stressful or anxious, or ends up becoming potentially a negative experience because of because of it. Whereas like a lot of these stories that we have, I think, at least for me, they're just stuff that happened. We were just playing, and this is the weird, crazy things that just came out of just playing and having fun, not thinking about that sort of thing.
Yeah, and having a rapport with, the people that you're playing with, and you have to develop a rapport. Like, even excuse me, even if you've been playing with people for a while, or even if you've known people for a while, I should say, knowing someone for a while and playing with them can be two distinct experiences, because your friend that you've been cool with since middle school or whatnot, who you're like, hey, and maybe you guys never talked about gaming in the same sphere. And then all of a sudden you bring it up and he's like, oh yeah, I do gaming too. And you're like, all right, cool. Like, let's get together. Let's do some stuff. And you're like, I've known this guy, for 5+ years, or however many. And, he's a gamer. I'm a gamer. So this should get along. And then you end up getting an absolute goddamn edgelord.
Yeah, I was gonna say, you boot up Final Fantasy and he boots up Call of Duty.
Yeah. Or yeah, essentially, or you boot up, Final Fantasy and he boots up, fucking like Doom's, like that Doom, what is it, the metal singer?
Metal, yeah,
I think it's like
Metal Singer, I think, yeah.
Yeah. And it's like, it's not that it's a bad game, but they are kind of like two different things.
Apples and oranges,
you
yeah.
know? Yeah. And so, and yeah, like you said, that could, I think the thing you were talking about with like kind of trying to make the magic,
Force the magic, yeah.
You try to force the experience where it's just like, and that, can lead to fomenting negative experiences. And I have kind of a hot take on negative experiences. Overall, yeah, they're not great, but you gotta have them, because and not only do you have to have them, you have to accept them. So as a short story about a negative experience, a fairly recent one. Some players in a game that I was running, we hadn't played for a while, and like for a long time. And when we were playing previously, we had the ability to kind of let our characters be very thin. And I don't mean like thin narratively. I mean like, instead of we could display in roleplay ourselves very much like our characters. We would get up and be animated and go over and talk to each other in roleplay scenes, and like and emote like very actively. And that was a very acceptable thing for us to do back then. And then fast forward like 15 years, and while we are all very similar people and we all still very much get along, we're not the same people that we were back then. And we had a situation where, one of my players, acting out as his character, got up and got into the face of one of my other players who was acting out his character. And it turned into a thing. Oh boy. There was a real life legitimate blow up. And it was definitely a learning experience, not just for us as a group, but for me as a GM, because for the most part, I have not had to deal with situations like that where someone, because all of us, especially the people I'm playing with, all of us were very much understanding of each other. And to have had a breakdown in attitude and communication like that, and there were outside real world factors that also kind of fed into this. No acrimony on either side initially, but we were all going through our stuff. This was 2023, and 2023 sucked. So, yeah, but because of that negative experience, and it was a negative experience, I'm not the type of person to put a spin on shit. But because of that negative experience, we learned more about ourselves, about our group as a whole, and about the changes to situation and personality that we've gone through in the 15 or whatnot years since we actually got to sit down and play together. Maybe more closer to 10, but still, like it was a long time. And while the situation was negative and it sucked, it was important that we had it. And it was doubly important that we had it when we did. This was like session 2 or 3.
Yeah,
of this
I remember
game.
it being pretty early on.
Yeah, it was pretty early on. And so it was good that we had it when we did, because we were able to get it done and experience it and get it out the way. And coming up on next month, minus missing games because of some holidays and some real life stuff going on, I will be running that game for a year next month on my birthday.
Happy
And
birthday.
I don't think that, well, I mean, it's next
soon.
month.
Coming soon to a podcast near you.
Mike's birthday episode where it's just me blabbing into a mic for an hour and a half talking about how young gamers don't know shit and shaking my fists at clouds.
Stay tuned.
But yeah, stay tuned. Yeah, it's coming.
But in the end, that negative experience was valuable.
Yeah. And ultimately, like, except for the ones that really derail things, they all are. Especially if you want to develop the relationships that give you positive experiences later.
And this is not, this is not like a catch-all thing, If you go to, meet with a brand new group and, everybody's just being just flat out racist and just being just something just completely unacceptable to you. You don't have to don't worry, I'm going through this because in the end it'll be a positive in some way.
Yeah, no. Like, if people are legitimately being horrible, like if you are approaching a table of people that are the people that normal folk talk about when they think of role players, and like those are the people that we should be avoiding, because those are the people that not only give us a bad name, but also are not, and especially if you're new. Like, if you're walking up to a table of, unfortunately very bitter old people, then yeah, don't sit through it if you don't want to, and you shouldn't want to either. But some bad experiences do need to be weathered, and it's kind of a gut check. It's, do you feel it's worth it? Especially if you're at the table with strangers, it's not. You don't have to fucking put up with it. If you're at the table with friends, it makes sense to kind of work through it.
It both, I was gonna say it both makes it slightly easier work through because you know them at the end of the day, and it's also harder because you're all friends and you're fighting amongst each other. So it's really hard because I always kind of say it's a little bit like a microcosm of life, and you have to decide whether it's worth it for you to weather, like you said, weather the storm, or if it's not. And that goes for any situation you're in.
Yeah, it's the social aspect. It's the social contract.
Exactly. But yeah, I think our sort of TLDR is to be in the have these experiences, but don't try to force these experiences because they'll just happen naturally. And that's what makes them so, part of what makes them so valuable is because you weren't trying to force it, you weren't trying to plan it. It was just a good time that was had, or right, in some cases a not so good time, but it was not something that was forced.
Yeah. Never try to force the magic.
I feel like it kind of falls into that like hole when you're dating someone and and you're trying too hard. Like it doesn't feel as good. Like being on the receiving end of it. Yeah, I know where you're thinking, where your mind's going with that.
I'm not.
It never fails.
I'm just gonna. 60% of the time, it works every time.
Okay, yeah, your mileage may vary.
But yeah. It's just it's very much the the getting to know, yeah, getting to and all that stuff. Let's let's pivot a little bit.
Okay. Pivoting.
We have a good time
We do.
talking to each other, recording the podcast and all of its various forms and functions as we have over the years. And we've used a lot of different tools to try to make this thing work. And some have gone well for us, and some have not. And
Very true.
we just wanted to go ahead and take a moment to talk about a tool that we are currently using and we will probably be using going forward in not just the recording of this podcast, but also anytime we're doing any plays over Discord. And that is Craig. Now, I am not the tech person. That is Erston. Erston knows these things far better than I do. I am more of press button, make go, does thing work, unga bunga, beat computer with rock. So I will give it over to Erston to maybe talk about some of the technical qualities of this wonderful recording bot. Because, like I said, he is much more attuned to that side of the business than I am.
Right. Well, I will do my best because I would say that I technically only have a basic level knowledge of Craig. So essentially, Craig is a multi-track recording bot that will join your voice chat in Discord, and it records everybody that's in the conversation. And then once it saves it, everybody has their own separate audio, like MP. Well, the formats actually can vary, like from FLAC, full lossless audio, to MP4, MP3, and you can even download it straight as an Audacity project file if you use Audacity, which in our case for our podcast I do. And then it also has lots of nice extra features like adding a note, such as for today's episode where I added a note when talking about the mailbag at Lorecraft, mailbag at lorecraft.media, slight plug again. I was able to click and type to add a note, and it's added into the recording. And when you download it, it gives you the timestamps of when you put these notes in. So you can leave a note, oh, we made him a recording error and we need to, cut this part because, Erston said something wrong or it's factually incorrect or, Mike's getting a little too crazy with those hot takes.
Like I'll ever stop you if you say something factually incorrect.
Okay, fair.
I will be like, leave it the fuck in.
Exactly. But it is a fantastic tool. And then of course, it's the recording quality is as good as Discord is. And for us it's worked pretty well so far. I mean, just as a simple level, you join a voice channel with the bot invited in your Discord, and then /join, it'll join the active recording where you can specify what channel for it to join. and Craig will join that channel. It keeps a track of the recording. You can choose to stop it at any time with simple buttons. It's a really fantastic interface. It even has a web interface, if I recall correctly, for higher, like better tier recordings and stuff if you support them on Patreon. I believe it is. But we're not currently doing that, but it's definitely seems like it's worth it, and we'll potentially be doing that in the future. I think that kind of covers most of everything.
Yeah, pretty much. And like importance and noteworthy of being able to, especially in the instances where you are doing your gaming over Discord or Roll or VTTs or anything like that, and you're doing the voice bits, being able to record and hold on, because like I'm lucky, like I said before, that I have a really good memory. Like I don't remember everything, but the things that I do remember are with crystal clarity. But you know, in this digital age, being able to hold on to some of these positive and maybe even some of the negative experiences that might come across in your gaming career is important. And Craig is a great tool for being able to do that. And one of the things that we want to do with our podcast is put forward and support cool tools and techniques and stuff like that really
that liven your
that we really like.
Preserve them.
Yeah. So we'll be every once in a while when we feel we have the time and ability, we will be bringing up some product plugs for stuff, so that way we can continue to disseminate positive information about the good stuff that's out there for helping to get your gaming good and such. I think we got a good one.
I think we do
this time. Urson, I think we had a good conversation about positive and negative experiences in roleplay, their importance, what they mean to us, very specific stories ourselves, me being fairly long-winded. But, you know, that's Mike. I talk a lot, and I use big $17 words that sometimes I pay $15 for. So with that, go ahead.
I was going to say, and then myself, who, I clearly have a different mind because I don't have that crystal clarity that you have. I just remember the several smaller bits and such. But yeah, I guess this is the part where we say thank you very much for sticking with us. It looks like about an hour at this point. So once we always appreciate and hope you enjoy listening to us rant and talk about things that we feel are important to storytelling.
And things that we hope you will feel are important and that you resonate with. So that way you can share the love of storytelling and the enjoyment of not just role-playing, but storytelling and narrative development that we do. And we still have not fully developed our support structure yet. We are hoping at some point to throw out a Patreon out there, so that way if you guys like what we're doing, you can help keep it going. We are dudes that have regular jobs.
We are.
So having the assistance that we can in keeping the thing going outside of work is appreciated.
Definitely. And right now, just spreading the word, and if you like us and give us a like, interact with us, that always helps. Being able to talk and interact with you all is always, that's a valuable experience right there.
And yes, that is a valuable experience that hopefully will mostly be positive, but this is the internet.
And only the mailbag will tell.
Only the mailbag will tell. And so with that, I will go ahead and bid my particular adieus. I would very much like for everyone to take care of yourselves, take care of each other, take it easy, and if it's easy, take it twice. Send them homers.
All right. This is Erston signing off and saying happy storytelling. The music for today's episode, Never Satisfied and Good Night, provided by Slip.Stream.